All right, we go now to Mary Margaret Olohan, senior reporter at the Daily Signal. Mary Margaret, great to be with you as always. A lot to get to today, but first, as you heard from Eric, Justice Samuel Alito is now saying that he has a pretty good idea of who was behind that leak. I know that you have been following this from the very start. I want to get your thoughts on all this, and are you surprised?
I'm not surprised, Tracy. No, and it's good to be here. So Justice Alito, he thinks that he knows who this Dobbs leaker was, who leaked the draft opinion showing that Roe v. Wade would be overturned. Now, that leaker leaked to Politico, and that leak resulted in months of protesting outside the Supreme Court and protesting outside the homes of the justices. Alito says that he thinks it was done in order to intimidate the justices and to cause all this mass panic, and it did. It actually resulted in someone traveling across the country from California to Maryland to kill Kavanaugh in his home while he was sleeping. Just so insidious. We also know that there were extremist groups that piggybacked off this leak. They published the addresses of the justices online. They firebombed pro-life pregnancy centers and Catholic churches across the country. All of this happened, and yet we haven't identified who this Dobbs leaker is. Now, Alito says he doesn't think they have enough information to actually firmly establish who the leaker is, though he believes he knows who it is. We don't know. And yet, as ongoing protests are going on outside the homes of the justices, the Department of Justice and the U.S. Marshals aren't enforcing 18 U.S. Code 1507, which says that you cannot protest in such a manner outside the home of a justice in order to change how they are going to rule. And that is exactly what we saw all last summer as we waited for this Dobbs opinion.
Yeah, meantime, something else I want to get your thoughts on that Eric also mentioned. You know, on Saturday, the Politico reporters who published the leaked opinion, well, they were given the prestigious Katharine Graham Award for Courage and Accountability at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, that dinner is a complete and total joke. But second of all, that award that was given to them and when they received it, they made no bones about the fact that they were aware of the political ramifications of publishing such a story. They even made comments that seemed to be that they were aware of the fact that it could potentially delay the overturn of Roe v. Wade, impact the justice's decision. So it's a joke, Tracy. They knew what they were doing. They knew the ramifications of this story. It had huge ramifications. We saw the protesting that followed. We saw an assassination attempt that followed. We still see ongoing protesting. Justice Alito couldn't even go in person to give those remarks at George Mason University. He had to deliver them from the Supreme Court in a private room because of the security risks. So this is not over. It's ongoing. And we've seen very little done to sufficiently protect the justices in these cases.
We have a little over a minute left, Mary Margaret, but I want to talk about a story that you have out today with the Daily Signal about Republican Senator James Lankford and the abortion drugs. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Senator James Lankford, the Daily Signal was able to first look at this podcast episode that he did with Dr. Donna Harrison, who's at the Charlotte Lozier Institute, and with Eric Baptist, who's with Alliance Defending Freedom. And they broke down the ramifications of these abortion drugs and the fact that the FDA has now made it under the Biden administration so that women can get these abortion drugs by mail without ever having seen a doctor. And this is wild to me because I've been reporting on this for a couple years. And I remember when the FDA had these risk mitigation evaluation REMS, they call them, in place so that women were protected from abortion pills. Before you got one, you were supposed to consult with a doctor. There were a couple different barriers in place to protect women. Now you get them by mail. And in some cases, the first drug is intended to kill the baby, and the second drug is intended to help the mother deliver the baby. But when this is happening at home without a doctor, often the women don't know how far along in the pregnancy they are. And in this case, if the baby is past a certain point, that can be very seriously dangerous for the mother. And yet we have all these advocates and lawmakers saying this is pro-woman, this is helping them. We need more abortions after Roe. It's a very anti-woman, anti-informed consent process that we have going on here. And so this was an interesting podcast episode where these pro-life experts break down what's going on with the abortion drugs. And Senator Lankford, kudos to him for drawing attention to it, because there's very little lawmakers right now who are willing to discuss this with candor and actually get into the facts of what these abortion drugs entail. I think they call it an abortion drug cocktail. That's a good way to describe it. And we need to be talking about it more.
Yeah, and we're glad that you are. So thank you so much, Mary Margaret. Great to be with you as always.
Thanks so much for having me.